opening lines of communication, aiming to seize central real estate and prepare for swift piece development towards the enemy king. Securing d5 is the immediate ambition, preparing a flexible pawn structure for the coming struggle. Instantly seizing central space, this aggressive advance challenges black's pawn structure and opens lines for piece development. Challenging the center immediately, this pawn push ignites a fierce struggle for central dominance and opens dynamic lines. Opening the center, this pawn exchange aims to seize the initiative and potentially create attacking chances on the king side. Reclaiming the pawn firmly establishes black's central pawn structure, offering a solid foundation for development and counterplay. Instantly challenging the pawn center, white creates immediate central tension and fights for space. Developing the knight efficiently counters white's central pressure while preparing for castling. Developing a knight to control the central squares and prepare for castling efficiently solidifies white's early positional advantage. This solidifies black's central pawn structure, mirroring white's intentions and preparing for piece development. Pinning the knight here pressures black's central pawn structure, demanding careful consideration of pawn breaks and knight development. Abandoning the central pawn gambit here opens white's c-file and invites immediate counterplay for the initiative. Aggressively seizing the center, this gambit sacrifices pawn structure for immediate king-side pressure and open lines. Knight boldly ventures into the center, challenging white's advanced pawn and disrupting their pawn structure. Exploiting the misplaced knight, this move intensifies pressure on the queen side and eyes the exposed black monarch. Sacrificing the knight like this opens lines, but beware the exposed king. Sacrificing the bishop clears the way, opening lines and creating an immediate threat against the black king. A courageous pawn sacrifice, disrupting white's pawn structure and opening crucial diagonals for black's pieces. Developing the knight to a natural square, now aims to castle and solidify the king side. Sharpening the king side attack with a fianchetto offers dynamic counterplay against white's central pawn mass. Disrupting black's pawn structure on the queen side, this capture opens lines but weakens white's king safety. Opening the f-file, you create a vulnerable pawn structure and expose your monarch, a bold choice inviting sharp play. Castling secures the monarch, preparing for an active middle game while simultaneously connecting the rooks. Unveiling the queen to the queenside eye creates immediate pressure along the b2 g7 diagonal. Unlocking the king's safety with a well-timed rook lift, preparing to exploit the open f-file. Escaping the immediate check, black's monarch now occupies a precarious central square, a prime target for white's continuing initiative and open lines. Exploiting the exposed king, this maneuver aims to open crucial lines before black can consolidate. Unleashing this pawn storm exposes your king's sanctuary to open lines of attack. Pursuing the exposed monarch offers a potent psychological edge, even if temporary, forcing further defensive repositioning. Developing the bishop to an active diagonal, this piece eyes the now exposed enemy monarch while preparing for potential queenside expansion. Sacrificing the queen here gambles on rapidly dismantling black's defenses, but it overlooks the dangerous open files now threatening white's own monarch. Sacrificing material for initiative, black aims to shatter white's central pawn structure and expose the king. Unleashing this pawn sacrifice now exposes black's king to a dangerous degree, opening crucial lines for a swift attack. Unleashing a pawn storm towards the enemy king, this aggressive advance creates immediate tactical possibilities and chaos. Clearing the knight to f3 reopens lines and threatens the king's safety, aiming to exploit black's exposed monarch. Securing the queen's escape route and preparing a counterattack along the c-file offers a glimmer of hope in this otherwise challenging position. Repositioning the queen aggressively, white aims to exploit the open g-file and the exposed black king. Shielding the king behind pawns now solidifies the defense against that invading queen and prepares for queenside development. Asserting central dominion, this knight pivots to solidify its presence and pressure black's weakened queenside. The bishop aims to solidify the queenside pawn chain's integrity by anchoring itself on a central diagonal, initiating a decisive exchange that clears the path for increased piece activity, potentially exposing black's king. Regaining central pawn presence, this recapture solidifies your pawn structure and opens the f-file, promising dynamic play. Unleashing a decisive discovered attack, this move strips away black's defensive shield and forces an immediate king retreat, significantly worsening its safety. Securing the queen's re-entry is crucial, as the king remains exposed on the queen side. Exchanges a pair of queens, simplifying towards an endgame where white has a significant pawn advantage. The exchange simplifies the position, but leaves black's king remarkably exposed on the d8 square with little defensive cover. Opening the e-file now allows your rook to penetrate white's weakened kingside defenses, a potent positional advantage. Developing the bishop to f5 now aims to restore some piece activity, though the pawn structure remains a long-term weakness. Securing the f-file opens avenues for pressure on black's uncastled monarch. The monarch's journey to safety remains paramount, as the king retreats further into the shadows, seeking refuge from lingering threats. Opening the f-file aggressively to exploit black's exposed king presents a fascinating tactical gamble. Expanding on the queen side, black secures a new outpost for the bishop while challenging white's central pawn majority. Shattering the pawn chain, white opens lines for their rook and aims to exploit black's exposed king in the ensuing chaos. Reclaiming the pawn solidifies your central presence and prepares for piece development. A crucial pawn thrust to gain space and restrict the opponent's bishop. Pushing the b-pawn now aggressively stakes a claim on the queen side, potentially disrupting white's coordination. Repositioning the knight aims to disrupt black's central control, and potential pawn advances. Trading rooks here simplifies the position, potentially leading to an active queen and bishop endgame for black. Securing the king's safety now becomes paramount, opening the path for piece activity. Initiating a final sequence with a check, aiming to exploit the exposed white monarch and disrupt immediate king safety. Bringing the monarch back into the fray addresses the king's exposed position from the prior checks, seeking a safer haven. Reactivating the bishop to the queen side offers counterplay and challenges white's cramped pieces. Pushing the g-pawn now opens lines for your rook, though it also weakens the king side further. Reactivating the bishop to the long diagonal offers better prospects than passively defending. Targeting the central pawn advance by locking down the bishop's diagonal offers a positional squeeze.